Yeah.
My name's Beth Wellen. I am the education coordinator for Schooner Adventure, and I want to welcome you to our history sharing program. And for my regular faithfuls, I am so happy to see you. I cannot believe our luck. We've been canceled the last 3 months in a row. Winter and snow is, I feel cursed. Then when I heard the forecast for today, I was like, you got to be kidding. This program has been going on for about 3 years. It's called the History Sharing Program. I emphasize that second word, sharing. I do not want to be the only person talking. Please, if you have any memories, stories, knowledge of anything you see in this program, please speak up because it just makes the program so much better. Now, the program we're doing today, and I have to actually get to it.
Okay,
Where are you?
what's going on?
Yeah.
I read in the Cove that they want that they're going downhill because of that. It's not as functional as they don't like it.
Now,
But you said, and it said that, you said 7.
I would have to get some if I needed
But
it.
7 is
all right. Today's
So,
topic.
yeah, they did say that to rename. And I said, well, rename is right.
There we go. Thank you. Is The Ghosts of Vincent Cove. I blatantly stole this title from our dear friend Joseph Garland. In his book, the Gloucester Guide, he has a whole section about the ghosts of Vincent Cove. And this project got started because of a wonderful gentleman who's in the room, Buzz McEachern. It was his idea. He had collected a few things, brought it to me, and we decided, and then I went gangbusters and got some wonderful help. Buzz got some help from Eric Ronberg, that wonderful ship model maker in Rockport. And I got, of course, my wonderful, excellent help from my 2 partners in crime at the Cape Ann Museum, Fred and Stephanie Buck. And wow, we're getting even more and more people coming. This is wonderful. But the reason Joe used the phrase ghost is because Vincent Cove doesn't exist anymore. We're sitting in it. This was water. This was Vincent Cove. This map is from the 1830s. And to help you figure out where we are, you'll recognize this. This is the fort. This is our inner cove with the public landing and what's now St. Peter's Park, right there. This point here is Duncan's Point. Today we know it as Harbor Loop. And this is Vincent Cove right here. Look at this very good-sized cove right next to Harbor Loop. This street coming right up through here, this is our main street, originally called Front Street. What's missing? There's no Rogers Street yet. That will show up as we look through these series of maps as we go through time. Rogers Street will start to appear. But what we're talking about today is this area, Vincent Cove, and one of the main, there was a number of businesses along Vincent Cove, but one of the big things that happened there was, of course, shipbuilding. Now, for us today, if you were to ask about shipbuilding, we would, of course, all think, oh, Essex. But we actually had our own shipbuilding companies here in Gloucester, and a number of them were right in Vincent Cove. Okay, like I said, this is from the 1830s. Come on, here we go. Next map, this one is from 1851. And again, here's the fort, the inner harbor, here's Duncan Point, and here's Vincent Cove up here. Good-sized cove. It's already changed its shape a little bit. So one thing you're going to notice about Vincent Cove, the shape kept changing. It kept getting filled in until eventually it didn't exist anymore. And on this map, you'll see it's not Main Street, it's Front Street, and this section down here was called Spring Street. Of course, it's all now renamed as Main Street. But again, no Rogers Street yet in 1851. Now, this is a photograph I got from the Cape Ann Museum. A little grainy, but this is from East Gloucester looking across. This is actually the entrance into Vincent Cove, and it curves and goes right behind these buildings here. There's actually a bit of an opening, but it goes in and around here. And from the water, you almost can't tell it's in there. it wasn't a very big cove. And when you see the pictures of the launchings, you're wondering, how in the world did they get that boat down in the water without smashing into other buildings? So, but, and right over here, this is Duncan Point area. All right. Now, when Buzz got me started on this, he knew about the John Bishop shipbuilders because the person who took over and built the last 6 vessels at the John Bishop yard on Vincent Street. Has anybody ever heard of Vincent Street? Doesn't exist anymore. Is Buzz's grandfather, Owen Lance. And he did take over. But when I went researching and went through the directories, discovered, guess what? There was more than just the Bishops. I had always heard about the Bishops, but we had David Alfred Story and A.J. Frisbee. And I did find an old ad in the city directories. They operated from 1869 to 1879, and from what research we could find, there were at least 26 vessels built there. I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I would say it's probably a 90% chance that this is related to the same stories of Essex, because a lot of these shipbuilders eventually moved over to Essex. Owen Lance did when he was done. Then the next one was Poland and Woodbury, and some of the researchers, only Poland gets credit for the vessel. Other times, sometimes it's Woodbury, and here's an advertisement. Again, the street is the yard at Vincent Point. Still not existing. Then you have Bishop showing up. Originally he was with Murphy, and Bishop and Murphy together between 1882 and 1887 built at least 18 vessels that we could find. Then it becomes John Bishop's company, and in the directory he's listed John Bishop Shipbuilder, again Vincent Street. During a short period, his brother Hugh had credit for 16 of the vessels all by himself. And at one point, it was called the Bishop's Brothers Shipbuilding Company. But there was, like I said, there was a couple of vessels that only had Hugh Bishop's name associated with it. And then, of course, the last couple of years when John Bishop got ill, Owen Lance took over. Now, what I missed was this guy. Now, overlapping John Bishop a little bit was Thomas Irving, who built some of our, actually some of our quite famous vessels, too.
Was this from the same yard?
Irving is a totally different yard. I'm going to show you on the map where each of these were. But, we try to keep the color coding similar. We actually have a big version of the map here that we're going to leave here with the visitor center. It's going to go on the wall. And a complete book copy of this PowerPoint is in a binder along with this timeline. So it'll be here for people to look at whenever they want to. But yeah, so Thomas Irving is the other company. We know of him at least with 29 vessels. I could not find an advertisement for him. I saw him listed in the directory, but he didn't apparently spend the money for an ad like this, whereas the other ones did. All right, so where were these guys? Okay, looking at, this is an 1872 map. This area where the green star is, this is about where Thomas Irving and Dana Story's yards were. And this area, this section here where the purple star is, that's the area that you have the Poland, Woodbury, and then the Bishop and Lance yards eventually. So those were the 2 spots. As far as we know, there are never any on this section up here. All right, now, that wonderful historian, Gordon Thomas, who wrote Fast and Able and Wharf and Fleet, he spent his life researching Gloucester schooners. He's the one who hand-wrote this huge directory of every single Gloucester vessel that he could find. And he would write down the year, what type of vessel it was. He wrote a lot more than just length. I just stuck with the length. He had the tonnage and the width and all that jazz. Its home port, its owners, and its builders. And this was a handwritten thing. It's at the Cape Inn Museum. I was given a copy of it, typed it all in the computer, was able to sort through, and this is the names I found associated with David Alfred Story. Now, one in particular that I want to point out is the Grace Alfiers. Does anybody recognize the name of the Grace Alfiers?
Howard Blackburn was
It was.
he was a crew member,
Yes.
lost his hands
Mm-hmm.
and his dory mate.
Right. And this is a picture of her being built at the Dana Story Yard on Vincent Cove. You can barely see that there's water here. Tiny. It makes you wonder how they launched these things. But yes, this is the vessel that our Howard Blackburn did get lost from during that snowstorm with his dory mate who did die. Howard Blackburn did return. His tavern, of course, was right up. You know, you walked out his back door and there was Vincent Cove. He used to tie one of his boats up right outside his back door in Vincent Cove, so he remembers
This
everything.
is Vincent Cove here shown.
Oh, it sure is, yep.
Okay.
Yep, and this is the Grace Alfiers that's being built, and this is the boat that eventually Howard Blackburn did get lost from. Out here, this is the main part of our inner harbor. And over back here, that's East Gloucester. All right, now, these are the boats that were listed by Daniel Poland Jr. by himself. Then you have Poland and Woodbury, and this is all between 1873 going up to 1879. Not a very long time. But the one boat I want to zero in on is the Little Giant. Not a schooner, but, come on, a little steamboat. Now, it was used for helping dock vessels at first, but then it became the ferry that brought people back and forth across the harbor. This is East Gloucester. This right here is the Reed and Gamage site, which is now Beacons Marine. And this area right here is all the wood stuff is gone, so it's much smaller. But this is where the North Shore Art Association is. So this is where the Little Giant is pulling in. But that was built right in Vincent Cove by Poland. And looking across, the opening to Vincent Cove is right about here. You almost can't see it. It's so busy. It's amazing that tiny little cove had so much happening in it. All right, so here's a map. Now we're up to an 1887 map. Poland's yard is gone by 1879, but it was up in this area of the cove. And here's that Vincent Street we've been seeing on the addresses coming in. Bishop's Yard was right here. You can see how narrow the entrance was from the harbor. This is the harbor, the inner harbor here. And then Story's Yard, he has an address as Pierce Street. Pierce Street, of course, also doesn't exist anymore. The street out here, the Emmanuel Lewis Street, is actually going right about through here, like one building's distance north of it. So, Pierce Street, to help you, this is Chestnut Street right here. So it's almost right directly opposite the bottom of Chestnut Street. That's where Pierce Street used to come through. So by the time this map happens, the only yard that's operating at this point is Bishop's. All right, now this is in Vincent Cove. This image is from the Library of Congress. From the angle that the picture is taken, I believe this is in Bishop's Yard because of this building right here. This little round thing with the cone top, that's one of the two brick gas tanks that were on Pierce and Water Street, which is basically right across the street, the parking lot to the cold storage building. That's the area where those tanks were. So that means the main part of the harbor is out here. I don't know what vessel this is. It didn't tell me, but you can see all the wood piled up. And they literally, right on the edge of the water. This is Vincent Cove water right in here. And as soon as it's ready, they just slide it on down. All right, now we're talking about bishops. First Bishop and Murphy, and that's from 1882 all the way down to about 1887. And almost every single one they built is a schooner. And then we have Hugh Bishop, who gets credit for single-handedly for some of the boats, at least according to Gordon Thomas's research. He's listed from 1892 to 1904, building quite a few vessels, but different types. We've got some sloops, we've got some schooners in there, and then we've got special types of schooners, the Indian headers, because of their names that he built. But then we get to John Bishop. Now I know this is a lot to read, which is why we made that booklet, so anybody who wants to sit and really read through those names, you're welcome to, because that's going to stay here, this copy of this. Now we have John Bishop, or the Bishop brothers at some point. There's two in particular I'm going to point out. 1890, the Nanny C. Boland, which was built for Tommy Boland. He was one of our crack skippers. He was one of the master mariners, and he was notorious for being crazy with speed. And his Nanny C. Boland, he used to brag that nothing could beat her. And the Columbia was also a very fast vessel, and I have pictures of both. This is the Nanny C. Boland. This image is from the Cape Ann Museum. And this is her being built, and you can see she's pretty fancy for a fishing boat. And he drove her hard, and he was so proud that she could handle anything. And he was actually hired for some races because of his skills as a skipper. And you can see Vincent Cove water in the background. Okay? And this here, this is be the backside of what we know as Main Street, because this is in the Bishop Yard. And this is from Joe Garland's collection. This is a picture taken on board Columbia at sea. I know there's a nautical term for having your edge down in the water, but I can't think of it. But that just makes me, yeah. But yeah, she's obviously moving rather fast in the wind. So, all right, here's a 1892 map. Now, what you may not have been noticing is the shape of Vincent Cove keeps changing yet again, and it's been getting smaller. Okay? It used to go much closer to Main Street than it is now. Now it's been filled in a lot more. Try to remember where Howard Blackburn's property is. I think it's right here. I think this is Howard Blackburn's. I'll have to check on all the other ones. But the water used to come up to his back door at that point. But here's where the Irving Yard was down here. Here's where Irving. This was the Story Yard. Irving is right here. He really had a Main Street address. Well, he's behind the buildings, but he was down here. And Bishop's. So these two are in operation at the same time. Sure.
You go out to the back door right now, you'll be stepping into Tom Irving's yacht.
Exactly.
You go out the back door of the Rose Baker Center.
Exactly. We're all sitting in. Now here's some of the Thomas Irving vessels, 1884 down to 904. One of them, the actor is able to find a picture of it. That was built in 1902 at the Irving Yard. And notice it going in. Looks like it's going straight to the bottom. But no, it stayed afloat. On the other side of this building here, this is the front of this building is Main Street. And so this came back. Now this building, this long building here, eventually becomes a theater.
Can I make a
Not the
comment?
stream. Yes.
I think that must be the old tower of St. Anne's.
No, this is the First Baptist Church
Oh, is it?
steeple. Across the street from the Cape Ann Museum, that parking lot, that's where the old First Baptist Church was, and that's the First Baptist Church steeple. This, of course, is our City Hall.
Oh.
Yeah.
And St. Anne's from this angle isn't showing up.
To the right someplace.
Yeah. But Main Street is on the other side of this building, the front of this building right here, which is attached to this long wharf-type building. That's the front of Main Street. So there was an opening going between this building and that building up to the street. And it was like 3 buildings back before they hit the water. So. Okay, now we're into the 1900s. Okay, here's the map again. And this is the first time the boatyards actually show up on these Sanborn maps. These are the old insurance maps that were made. And showing you where the buildings were. And right here, it actually says the Thomas Irving Yard. And that long building I was pointing to, here it is. And that shorter building, you can see the opening. And that white building that it's attached to, here's Main Street. So, coming down.
So the long building became the Olympia Theater.
Olympia, yes. Actually, it's on one of my later maps. So we're going to keep an eye out. Can't remember because we have two. We have the Olympia and the North Shore.
Not sure, right.
I believe the North Shore ends up here and the
Yeah,
Olympia
that
is
was right
here.
there,
So,
yeah. Where Dunkin' Donuts is.
exactly. Dunkin' Donuts and Papagino's. So, and where Liquor Locker is where the North Shore Theater used to be.
Pacino's is more on the corner of Pierce.
We had one at the top of the hill there. I remember my uncle taking me there when I was a little kid.
I actually do remember the North Shore one. When I was in college, I went there.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah.
This one, I think was gone within a few years.
Okay.
But it was up the other end of Main Street.
The Strand. I've heard of the Strand, and that was down at the other end.
Yeah.
Where,
The Union Hill,
Union Hill Theater.
Union Hill Theater.
okay.
Union
Not
Hill
that I
was
was
it?
there when it was there, but.
See, this is why we have sharing programs so we can get all that information correct. But- oops. Now, here's more of John Bishop. John Bishop built an awful lot of vessels. And one of them, in this list, now we're talking from the 1900s to 1904. I mean, this is just in 4 years. He and his crew were busy. And, you know, it was sloops, schooners. The Indian headers are a type of schooner. Sloops were more like private sailboats and racers. But the Helen Miller Gould for Solomon Jacobs was a pretty famous vessel for Gloucester. In fact, the little park next to the harbor master's office is the Solomon Jacobs Park. And this is the launching of the Helen Miller Gould. What was so famous about her? She was the very first vessel built with a engine. It was a gasoline engine, and everybody thought he was crazy, too unreliable, too dangerous. When he proved everybody wrong, of course, that started engines, and that was the precursor to the end of sails. But she did have both. But he did have a motor on her. It only lasted about 4 years because the engine did catch on fire and it burnt up. Didn't stop him. He built another one. And then they switched over diesel engines, which were safer. But that was built at Solomon Jacobs Yard, and he was the forerunner of motor fishing vessels. So. All right, here's some more John Bishop vessels. Now we're going from 1905 to 1909, and the Cynthia is pretty special, at least for us, adventure. It was owned by the Sylvania Smith Company. Reason it's pretty special to us, here she is because who is her skipper? And I don't see him. He's not here yet. He's supposed to come. This is Jeff Thomas, one of the many Thomases from Nova Scotia who settled here in Gloucester, and they were master mariners. And Billy Thomas, his brother, was a master mariner himself. Fred Thomas was an engineer, took care of engines. Jeff Thomas was captain of the Cynthia, the Puritan, the Sylvania, but most important for us, he was our first owner and captain of Adventure. And he actually died on the decks of Adventure of a heart attack. But he had been one of the top skippers in the city at the time. This is a picture of Jeff Thomas at the wheel of the Cynthia. He thought this was a pretty great vessel. Okay, now we're in 1909. Thomas Irving has gone out of business at this point, and it's only the Bishop Yard going on at this point. And it's still gotten narrower and narrower at this point, up at the head of Vincent Cove. I'm not sure if anybody had taken over that Poland and Woodbury site, if they would have been able to even launch vessels at that point there. This is the Thomas Irving site. It says Olympia Theater now. So yes, it did become Olympia Theater at that point. No North Shore Theater yet. So this is by 1909. All right, here is the last of John Bishop's vessels, 1910 through 1912. One of them is the stiletto that I have a picture of that we'll look at next. But it's in 1912 that Owen Lance his name comes forward. Now, Buzz, he had been working for the bishops.
He was working for the Bishop Yard. When John Bishop took sick, he took over. He built 8 boats, then he moved to Essex and built more boats in Essex.
And you remember visiting his site in Essex.
Yes.
So, yeah, and we do have 2 vessels that are given joint credit to John Bishop and Owen Lance, the Mary F. Sears and the Francis S. Gruby. But then from then on, they are Owen Lance's. And I actually have pictures of the stiletto and the Bay State, which was the first, according to this amount of research, that Owen Lance gets full credit for. And here's the stiletto. Actually, the men are actually still building her. You can see them working. Boy, does this look familiar from the work we've been doing on Adventure. So, and this is the stiletto in the water, wintertime, and this is up at Jordan's Wharf, which is up where Rose's Marina is now. And she was built for the Jordan Company. And here's the Bay State. This is Owen Lance's first full credit vessel being launched. Now, back up. There we go. I'm wondering if the condition of this building here is a hint of why they gave up on that site. I'm wondering if it had becoming so dilapidated and so difficult to use, if that was the reason why Owen Lance moved to Essex. But it does not look like that site is in very good shape at that point. So, but what's neat is you can see its name very clearly, Bay State. And this is another image I got from the Cape Ann Museum. Now this is another postcard of a vessel from the angle. It has to be the Bishop Yard, unless it's early enough to be the Pole in Woodbury, because Main Street's here. So it can't be Irving or Story. So it's on the other side. This is, Vincent Street here. These towers you might recognize, they still exist up on the hills there. It's hard to tell what this says. And I've been trying to match it up with the names of which vessel it is, but I haven't been able to identify which one it is yet. But there it's going in, and some daredevils riding it in. What was interesting is almost every time a vessel was launched, either here in Gloucester and definitely in Essex, it was a party. It was a celebration. The schools even used to close down, so everybody could go watch a launching. And you'll see there's people here, and there's people here, and there's a story of one of the launchings here in the Cove. They had ropes on them, so it couldn't just go sliding in and smash to the other side. And one time, one of the ropes gave, and it almost hit the other side, and everybody went scattering. But, yeah. All right, here we are, 1917. Notice how thin we are right now. And the other sad thing about this point, all the boatyards are gone at this point, and you can see why. Here's that Olympia Theater on the site of the Thomas Irving. And of course here, this is where Stories was. Now we see the North Shore Theater is here, and Howard Blackburn is right next to it. But this area that was the Bishop's for so long, it's now been taken completely over by the electric company. They had always been there, hidden behind all the other buildings. Coal burning at one point, and stuff like that. But even the entrance has gotten quite narrow. And this is starting to lead to the demise of our poor little cove here. And this was the leading reason for the demise of the cove. These pictures were taken probably at the very early 1940s. This building right here is the back half of the Olympia Theater, and this is where the opening would have gone out to the outer harbor, and the cove would have been coming up more this way. And you can see it was completely, it was a dumping ground.
Trash.
It was and that, what is your name? Ed. Ed brought in, okay, it's a hood milk bottle, and You said there's a date on it.
1917 on the bottom,
Oh, yep, 1917 on the bottom. And where did this come from?
from the, when they were digging a hole for this building, there was a pile of dirt. And I pulled that out in the parking lot.
Okay, so who has eagle eyes?
That was like part of the trash.
Yeah, does anybody see it in the picture? Maybe it's But yeah, our Rose Baker Senior Center is basically sitting right here in this area. We're right here. And you can see this is one of the reasons why the cove kept getting smaller. Also, we kept building and filling, building buildings on wharfs, but then filling them in underneath, and so we just kept getting smaller and smaller. Okay, here's another image. Again, the back of that theater, and this arrow is from old city government pictures. It's pointing to where the sewer came out, right here, and it was underneath that theater. Now, watch this building here. It's going to show up in a number of pictures, and that will help us locate ourselves. The front of this is on Pierce Street. Now, Pierce Street would have been going straight through the parking lot on the other side, Dunkin' Donuts and Papagino's, coming out right at the base of Chestnut Street. So it's basically the Emmanuel Lewis Street moved over the other side of the buildings. So that's where we are. Okay, again, here's the theater again. Now, does this look familiar?
Yeah.
If you were to look out this window right now, this is what you would see.
That's
Alexandria's bread, the insurance, okay? Which means our building is literally right here. Now this it says water. This is, Ron, do you recognize this? Is this one of the old water boats?
Oh, ma'am.
What is that, do you know? It doesn't look like it's being used, obviously. Go jump on it.
I don't know what that is.
Okay. Now, in the next picture, this is a poor vessel, originally built in Vincent Cove, and unfortunately it died in Vincent Cove. According to Joe Garland's research, she's still in the dirt here. Basically where we're at. Now, remember I asked you to keep an eye out? Here's that same building. The theater is not showing up at this point. I think the theater may be gone by the time this picture was taken. The Olympia did not last as long as the North Shore Theater.
What's the round building?
This is one of the two gas tanks that were on, between Pierce Street and Water Street. Water Street is now is part of Harbor Loop.
At the end of Duncan Street?
Yeah.
I remember
So,
them operations.
yeah, there's an opening between here and here. This is where Pierce Street came down. And it would have gone all the way across again. There's no Roger Street coming through here at this point. This went all the way up to Main Street and stopped at the bottom of Chestnut Street. So, but again, let's see, maybe we see our milk bottle here. That is so cool that you brought that. Thank you.
You know, there's not even chipped. You know, it's just-
So, okay, now, here's that same building I asked you to keep your eye on. Now, see, the theater is gone by now, and no cove. It was in the 1940s that they finally gave up and completely filled it in. Notice our building, our neighbor, it's still there. We would be right here. There's no Emmanuel Lewis Street coming up through here yet. But there's still Pierce Street on the other side of these buildings. And Main Street there.
That's a 55 ship.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It is.
Yeah, these pictures are from the 50s.
Yeah.
Bob's Haberdashery.
Yep, Bob Haberdashery's right here. And this is the back of, Thurston's Automobile. Yeah. Automobiles. And these buildings all became part of Thurston's Automobile Center. And Bob Haberdashery was right here. It was between Bob Haberdashery's
Across the street.
and this. Which diner?
Hesper's.
Hesper's.
Hesper's Diner.
Now, is that the same silver streamline that's still there?
That's the one that's still there, basically.
Okay.
The next one, across the street was the Cape Ann guy.
Okay.
Across on the other side of Chestnut Street.
Now, Coffee Cup is just like a block or two up. But I'm still working on placing all those buildings along that section of Main Street. Haven't quite narrowed it down yet in this section. But it's so neat that this building is still there. It really helps us to place it and visualize what it was. Okay, and, oh boy, this one went really fast. Now, here's the old North Shore Theater. And here's the North Shore, yeah. This is, again, that same building. It's still there. The liquor locker is now on the site of this the North Shore. The package store.
Yeah, Campbell's package store,
Yeah.
the liquor locker.
Right here next door.
Where was one?
That's-
No, right on that side of the
was
theater. The North Shore Theater is where the
Rogers.
liquor locker is
The-
now.
Yeah, and they've extended it into some of that site. And right here, you can see a little bit, that's Howard Blackburn's
Halibut
Tavern,
Point.
Halibut Point. And again, notice this is all the filled-in cove, and we are literally right here in this squared-off area. All right, now this is an aerial photo, I believe, from the 60s or 70s. Now this is the water. This is Roger Street. Roger Street now exists. Here's Main Street. Here is the North Shore Theater. We were just looking behind it. Here is that brick building with the insurance and Alexandria's Bread. This is where the Rose Baker Center is now. Dunkin' Donuts is already there. Or something. The building's there. And there used to be a street coming right there. And here is Howard Blackburn's Halibut Point. And this building is gone now because they've extended the parking lot and rebuilt their newer building for Gorton's. So, and here's Chestnut coming down right. Now, Pierce Street, which we've been talking about, would have come straight through here. And then when there was no Roger Street. Now the entrance of the cove, basically you can see some of the shape of it right here because the electric company has always kept this property. Bishop's would have been right in this area. And the reason this parking lot for Gorton's is so much lower than Main Street and Roger Street is because that's the cove filled in. So the cove would have come right in about here. Actually, it would have come in, let's see, Pierce Street would have been coming right about here, and going through, and then as it, almost no sign of it off. Now, the next aerial photo kind of turns by 90 degrees, so everybody kind of pitch yourselves. Here's the water again. I couldn't turn it because it turned all the words funny. But again, here's Roger Street. Okay, here's Papagino's is labeled wrong. Papagino's should be here. This is the modern Google map. They're not quite correct. Here's us. Here's the Rose Baker Center. Here's that brick building that has the insurance agent and Alexandria's Bread, which they do have labeled correctly. We have the liquor locker. You can actually almost see kind of an outline of where the theater would have been. Then we have the Halibut Point, Howard Blackburn's building, and then Gorton's filling in. So the cove would have been right about like here and then coming out through here. And the, here's Chestnut, so this is where, right about here is where Pierce Street would have come down. So, and that is my story of Vincent Cove. Guys, come on up. And if somebody could hit the light switch.
We'll get them.
Now, like we said, we are leaving a complete copy of this whole program here for the Rose Baker Center. This map showing you the Story Yard, the Irving Yard, Woodbury, Poland Woodbury, Bishop, and then Owen's Yard is here. This is the 1990s map, but they wouldn't have all been there at the same time. Copy of that timeline with the advertisements and showing you their dates, number of vessels that we know of. Will be hung up with it, and a complete copy of the slides in a booklet. So anybody can come by and go through each one and read all those names and everything. It's all right here, going to be left here for you to look at your own pleasure. And Mike, we were told she's thinking of hanging it right there on that wall.
What's that?
The map and the builders.
Do we have more out there, you saying?
No, but Buzz was told that Lucy said this would be hung up.
They might hang it right there.
Yeah.
Could you make a CD of this collection? It would sell well, I think.
Oh, thank you. I would have to get permission from Capian Museum because of the use of their images. I'd have to ask them. They gave me permission to make the booklet and to show it, but to distribute copies, that involves all kinds of special permission from them. So, but we have permission to do this, and anybody's welcome to come. Yeah. So yeah, 'cause especially the slides with all the names of the vessels,
That's right.
people will want to go through and read those.
Yeah.
It was, and I was I was like, that's too much information to put up on a slide, which is why I narrowed in. But since we decided to make it into the booklet, but yeah, does anybody have any stories or memories about Vincent Cove, that area?
Yeah, Rogers. Anybody remember Rogers Restaurant?
Rogers Restaurant. Anybody remember Rogers Restaurant?
And Beer Joint.
And Beer Joint.
Yeah, and we used to hang out there.
Now, was that on Main Street?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, right near the North Shore.
Right in there, yeah.
Oh, I think, is it possible that building, was it a brick building with 2 stories above it?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. I think they tore it down and rebuilt the area.
Mm-hmm.
I just have fond memories of it because we enjoyed the food and the environment.
It'd be great to see if we could find pictures, a map, a location, even
Yeah.
menus.
Yeah.
They are passing around a clipboard. The senior center does like to keep track of their attendance because it lets them know which programs to keep going. It's a great audience. Thank you. This is a monthly program, barring snow. Hopefully we're done with that for the season. I will be back next month. I'm not sure yet what topic. I think I'm going to actually revisit my very first one, which started the whole process, which was the, we give a guided walking tour. It goes from the Fisherman's statue right up to the Fitzhugh Lane. I know it's Henry, but it's carved in stone, literally, 3 times on that hill. Hugh, so I keep calling it Hugh. But we do a guided tour and show these images in the spots. And when we created that tour, we realized some of the people who would enjoy it the most and have memories of those areas probably can't do the walking. So I created a slideshow and started coming here. And I've just been coming ever since. So we have a number of programs. KPN Cable has asked us to start filming them, so I do have to repeat some of the oldies so that they can then start broadcasting them. But next month I will start. It takes 2 sessions to do it because there's so much. I extended it, and the slideshow, we actually go completely around the whole Inner Harbor, all the way out to Wonson Point on Rocky Neck. So we do that in 2 parts, and we'll just slowly walk our way virtually along the harbor. We do have other projects that we're working on. There's 2 research projects I'm working on right now, and if anybody has more information, I'd love some help. One is the Master Mariners Association, and the other one that I'm working on is more of the urban renewal, talking about Vincent Point, Vincent Street, and Howe Street, and the streets that used to be up here before Rogers Street came through. That whole area has been cleared besides Duncan Point. All these street names that are long gone. I have a part 1 that we'll revisit, but hopefully I can get part 2 done.
The last slide you showed.
That was a Google Earth picture.
Right, the last slide you showed a little cove, the entrance to Vincent Cove.
Yes.
Today, a lot of people still refer to that little
As Vincent?
as Vincent Cove.
Yeah, it's Vincent's entrance, actually.
And, well, the entrance is all landlocked.
Yeah.
At one time, they're gonna try to, at one time, they were gonna try to put some lobster boats in there. And they couldn't do it because the entrance is all landlocked.
Oh,
Between the electric company and the freezer.
yeah, they're not allowed to use it.
Pursue it. The city can't do it.
I know, it's very frustrating. The coal storage building and the electric company have some wonderful waterfront that they don't use.
The cement barrier that went up between the cove and the harbor.
That's about when they were filling in. Yeah.
They didn't get permission to block off the harbor because during low tide there was no water in the sea.
Yeah.
Well, water during high tide.
Which is kind of what makes sense why they, finally gave up and filled it. It's either dredge it or fill it at that point.
A lot of people are referring to that little
But all that's left.
42 that they finally did get the cement barrier in between the cove and
42, okay, because I was trying to find what exact year they filled in Vincent Cove. And I heard it was the 40s.
that was at the museum.
Yeah. So, yeah, if anyone wants to look at the bottle. Again, thank you. It's the second Friday of each month, 10 o'clock. Here.